So I'm coming off a cold, so I'm gonna have my water here just in case. Dave, it's been great getting to know you and chatting with you over the last week or so. But why don't you, I think Harman is a brand we've all heard of, JBL part of it, but I was surprised to kind of learn, I think all of us use some of your company's products almost every day. Maybe you can kind of walk through that a little bit for us.
Sure. So show of hands, are you familiar with Harman? Okay, good, because I wasn't when I started there 10 years ago. Often gets confused with Harman, M-A-O-N, the beauty and health brand. But yeah, so Harman, we're the parent company of audio brands, JBL, Harman Kardon, AKG, Infinity. There's about 13 or 14 audio brands under that. We're a subsidiary of Samsung. So Samsung acquired us about 7 years ago now, 2016. And under the Harman umbrella, we have the consumer audio brands, which we just talked about, right? And there's the portable speakers, the sound bars, the headphones, those products. We also have a professional division. So, think of sound at stadiums, hotels, cruise ships. So, bands, touring, all of that. There's the whole professional line. And then there's automotive, right? And it's not just the sound in cars, right? It's also the technology. So Uconnect for Chrysler, for example, right? Backup cameras, navigations, all of that. And quite frankly, that's a big piece of why Samsung acquired us, was because of our automotive intelligence in that group. My job specifically, so I'm global vice president of e-commerce. Focus more on the consumer audio brands, the stuff that you and I would buy in this room.
And tell us a little bit about how you got there, how you got to Harman, because you have a fascinating background, mostly from the CPG space. And how does a guy with a CPG background get into the audio space?
Yeah, so okay, I'll take you guys back. I actually started my career off as a front-end web developer. So back during the dot-com boom, I was doing HTML, Flash scripting, if any of you guys remember that. Did that for about a year and a half, and as 22 years old, was offered a role with a startup to double my salary. And yeah, sure, I chased the money, did that. It lasted about a year. And then I got a job at Sobe, South Beach Beverages. I don't know if many of you are familiar with that, but
the gecko on the bottle.
Yeah, right? the lizard. Yeah. So when I started there, we were being acquired, or we were trying to be acquired by Coca-Cola, and there were negotiations going on for about a year and a half, and Pepsi came in and acquired us within 6 months. So stayed at Sobe for a while. Again, was doing a lot of the digital marketing, social media before it was social media, chat boards, and just listening to consumer feedback and all of that. And then ultimately, the gentleman who was running Pepsi Digital, John Vale, for those of you who would remember that name, pulled me over and he said, "Dave, why don't you come work for Pepsi?" And he goes, "And you could manage all the trademark brand." So it was Pepsi, it was Diet Pepsi, and at the time Pepsi Max, which today is Pepsi Zero. And it was interesting because I was still fairly young. A lot of my coworkers didn't want to work for a large corporation, right? So they were jumping ship, and I saw it as an opportunity, right? Bigger company, more opportunity, larger budgets. So I loved it. Right. And so I'm glad I made that decision. My tenure at Pepsi was 10 years, 4 years working on the brands. The one thing that was missing for me at the time was I wanted the global experience. Right. At the time, there was PI, which was Pepsi International. So I was just working on US, and I came across this opportunity at Diageo to run their digital marketing, social media. So basically what I was doing for Pepsi for their Smirnoff brand, but it was a global remit. And I absolutely loved it. Working directly with the different countries, learning their nuances, layer on it's an alcohol brand and you have age gating, which implicates targeting and all that stuff. Learned a lot. And then my VP from Pepsi got this global chief marketing officer role at Harman, and he pulled me over. And it goes back to when Ralph Santana is his name. He recently left. He's now the CEO at RecTech. But he goes, Dave, come work for Harman. I was like, Ralph, what's Harman? And since it started, and I learned. So got my foot in the door at Harman. Again, been there for 10 years, mostly on the digital marketing, social media side and all that. But again, as part of my career growth, the one thing that I was missing or lacking was e-commerce. So I had the conversation with my manager's manager, told him what I wanted to do to really get that experience. And when my boss at the time left, I was able to get the VP role of e-commerce, and I've been in the role for about 4 years.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So we talked earlier, you and I, about how Harman's really trying to focus on the D2C experience now for your brand. And maybe you can take us a little bit through about how you've seen consumer engagement sort of evolve in your time, especially as you've taken on the e-commerce role.
Yeah, sure. So, when I think of engagement, it's at a high level just making something interesting, right? Or gaining the interest of a consumer. And, I'll go back a couple of years, call it even pre-COVID. How we would look at engagement would basically be, okay, on social, there's 4 things you could do. You could like something, you could post something, you could view something, or you could share something. And we would ultimately come up with a methodology to really weigh each of those consumer behaviors with the ultimate goal of a post or a share having the most weight, right? Especially a share, if somebody gives their social seal of approval on a piece of content, you're engaging them, right? I think fast forward to today, it's certainly evolved in you have to re-engage and retarget and have that constant conversation with the consumer, right? It's where this whole kind of personalization comes in, right? Like this hyper individualism. How do you talk to each of your consumers individually versus just a spray and pray approach, right? So that's really how we're looking at it. From personalized journeys to personalized content based on how did they initially engage with us? Are they interested in a headphone? Are they interested in a portable speaker, home audio? Because each of those different engagements would get a different experience.
Do you think that's a product of our industry evolving, and maybe it's or is it the consumer evolving? Like, how has the consumer really evolved over that same time period?
Yeah, I think it's both. It's both. Personalization is huge. You talk to most brands. I think they're trying to get it right. It's not easy, by the way, especially as we head into kind of this cookieless world where you might not be able to track some of this stuff. It really depends on the focus of what the ultimate goal is, but also the consumer, right? So our main target is Gen Z. Okay, you got to play where they are. You got to play where they are. You got to be in social. You got to work with the artists and influencers that they're most attracted to. I think it's both.
How have you? What are some examples of where you've sort of evolved the omni-channel experience, right? We were talking earlier about some of the efforts you're doing in Asia. Like, what are some different ways that you've sort of evolved that engagement with them through the omni-channel?
Yeah. So, and we're still working on it, right? I think it's a constant evolution. I don't think there's one recipe for success. We're trying to really dabble in social commerce. Another thing is just live streaming. So, and I'll take us out of the US and I'll take us into Asia, for example, Tmall, JD.com. We do these live streams, which is basically like QVC meeting Instagram Live, when we roll out new products and we only do a few hundred of them and they sell out within minutes, right? So, again, there's kind of like engaging with the generation where they are, but then it's also where they're buying, right? The other thing too, I'll talk a little bit about it, and I'm interested to see if anybody in this room noticed it too. While Gen Z is our targeted consumer, coming out of COVID, we also saw an increase in the older generation who were, maybe afraid to buy online a little bit at first. So that was definitely a spike for us. And I really think COVID helped the barriers with, hey, I'm an older generation, I'm a little bit scared to buy online, to actually giving them a decent experience that is convenient, that is easy. So, we saw a lot of that, and I'll give Mama Spinato a shout out here. My mom was computer illiterate. She would not turn on a computer. She didn't own a cell phone. We got her a cell phone for safety issues. Now she buys everything online, and I can't even keep up with her texts. So we're from a targeting perspective, we did a shift not only to the Gen Z but to the older audience as well.
My Aunt Janet also was very afraid about buying online, but it's funny how easily she would call QVC to buy anything. I have like 10 years of Christmas gifts from my Aunt Janet who bought, and so she had the same evolution, right? Like now she feels very confident online, and I think it was COVID because she couldn't go anywhere. She was still doing her QVC, but they went online too,
Yep.
right? And it sounds like you're using that live streaming as a great way to actually show your products and their function. That's why it's like so powerful in so many ways, that live streaming. Are there partnerships that you've sort of leaned into as well to help you with that engagement and what are a couple of examples of how you use partners to help you?
Yeah, so we partner with artists and influencers, athletes, Giannis, Doja Cat. We'll also partner with macro and micro influencers. Typically, it's around new product launches, but we've actually evolved with them. Kind of the traditional asks or tactics, right? You think of when you work with an ambassador or when you sign an ambassador. There's asks in there. Please wear our products. Don't wear competitor products. Give us a couple social posts. Whatever it is, right? We've since added a commercial aspect to that, which our athletes and artists really enjoy. And I'll give a plug to our product personalization. So, those of you not familiar, you could go on JBL and you could personalize our products. You could upload photos, so on. We've been doing it for about 2.5 years. We've seen great growth, and we're rolling it out globally. But it allows the artists and influencers to kind of design something and also give their audience something that they might not be able to give them, right? And so, with Doja Cat, and we stumbled across a key insight with Bad Bunny. I'll talk about it tomorrow at the ShopTalk, so I don't want to leak too much. But so this is how we're engaging our ambassadors, artists, and influencers. I think we're still leveraging traditional ways and tactics, but then we're throwing on this new commercial piece, which gives value to the artist and ambassador, but then also drives revenue for the organization, which makes everybody happy.
I'll give you an American dollar if you can pronounce Giannis's last name. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
The basketball player for the Bucks. I'm not going to try because I would get it wrong as well. The Greek freak. You talked about how you're going through an evolution with your CRM as a way to hold on to your brands, and JBL is so well known as 70 plus years, but you're just now sort of engaging with CRM. What's going to be your strategy around that?
Yeah, so we're not just engaging. I think we're making some fixes and trying to evolve. And you're exactly right. You take the heritage of JBL going back to Woodstock, 7-year-old brand, and yeah, we don't even have a loyalty program, right? And I think, but before we get there, we have to fix the foundation, right? And we have to fix the plumbing. And I think, that's where we're at. A new ESP, new CDP, really getting that right before we could go, the next level. And, I think most brands out there really focusing on first-party data, right? Because we're doing okay, but we could be doing much better. And it's going to be more and more important, again, as we head into this cookieless world, which nobody knows.
Right. Have you considered about sharing with your first-party data with some of the other channels outside of the D2C channel? But Amazon's and Walmart's, like, they're clamoring for some of that as well, like the Amazon Marketing Cloud and those types of things, or are you kind of hesitant like most brands would be to share that level of data?
Yeah, I mean, every scenario is interesting. I mean, I would be hesitant to hand it all over, especially without consent. But doing targeting and retargeting, totally open to that. The other point I wanted to bring up too, and you mentioned the whole omni-channel approach. We're also seeing more of open arms with some of our key e-tailers than we've had in the past, right? So, I'll use COVID as kind of the time, but pre-COVID, D2C, we were really like this, and then what we call our direct e-com with some of our key e-tailers, they were doing their own thing. I think we've come to senses that at the end of the day, we just want to please our consumers, right? Today's consumer, they expect product within 2 to 3 days. Tomorrow's consumer is going to want product same day, if not within the hour. And how do we logistically fulfill that? So, being more open to like BOPIS models, right? Buying online, picking up in store, Amazon lockers. I mean, I want to utilize Uber Eats for delivery, right? If they could give me food in a half an hour, why can't they deliver a product within an hour? So these are the type of logistical things, we're thinking about, and we're having the conversations about with our key e-tailers.
Speaking of data and first-party data, like what are some of your approaches for utilizing the data you have about your customers and consumer?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're starting brand new, so segmentation's going to be huge. Mm-hmm. We want to get away from the email blast to the masses and really just couple in cohorts of gaming, right? Gaming was another thing that came out of COVID, right? People were stuck in house and we make a gaming headphone. Hey, let's invest a little bit more in gaming, right? But in yesterday's database, our gamers kind of fall in our overall, database. How do you segment them out? Because a gamer's not going to want to hear the same thing as a work from home student who has their own use case. So I think segmentation is going to be huge for us.
Great.
Yeah.
So what are some challenges that you guys are facing that we haven't already talked about? Like what are the things that keep you up at night?
Yeah. So chip challenges, which for a lot of OEMs was a challenge coming out of COVID, right? I think peak COVID. Supply and demand was there. The only way you could get our products was through us. And then you kind of had this COVID hangover and we couldn't make products. We couldn't get parts from the OEM. So we had no inventory. And I think we're just getting back to levels that, we like to see. So I think from a product perspective, we're fighting through those challenges. Specifically in my world, compliancy, I think data privacy, even analytics. So, we're all familiar with cookie consent here, but in Europe, it's very strict. So unlike the US where you have to opt out of cookies, in France, for example, you have to opt in. So we're unable to track like 60% of the people that go to the site. So it's hard to look and compare it historical data when it's not apples to apples. So that's a big piece of work we're trying to figure out. And obviously making sure we're compliant so we're not getting sued.
Talk a little bit more about the compliancy. Like what are the elements of compliancy that you have to worry about?
Yeah, so it's privacy policies, data sharing.
Yep.
US, you have ADA compliance, and we want to do it all. And I feel like GDPR and some of these legal things in Europe, they're changing and evolving, and then it's per country, and we're regionally based, so it's just really challenging to track and to just make sure we're fully compliant. Because I mean, the size of the lawsuits that are being smacked on some of these companies, it's no joke.
Yeah. Got it. I want to open up some questions here soon. But before we do that, what's the one product that you make or your company makes that you just couldn't live without?
Oh, the JBL Party Box. So yeah. So it's literally a party box. But the cool thing is, I mean, if you could get two, they actually connect to each other. So you could literally bring this thing outside and have surround sound outside. You could hook up a microphone up to it, guitar. The kids love it. So yeah, definitely a JBL party box is my fave. Yeah. Yeah, waterproof.
Okay.
It's IPX5, the party box, so it could take rain. You can't fully submerge it. But most of our products are IPX7, which means you could take it under. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I want to open it up. I'm sure there's some questions from the crowd. We got a microphone, so we'll bring that over to you.
So Dan Cover with Waterpick, and question for you with regard specific to Amazon, the marketplace. One of the challenges that we face again is the micro brands. I just searched Bluetooth speakers, on Amazon, and you got a $25 option down there with a cross out price of $125, which never happened. Mm-hmm. I guess it's so just setting that stage. 2 questions: are you 1P through Amazon, or
Yes.
you're 1P
In US.
in the U.S.?
Yep.
Okay. What are some of the things that you've done, or how big of a challenge has that been with those micro brands, again, being exposed, driving the demand as you are, all those activities you're doing? Are there anything that you feel really good about on how you've been able to manage that challenge with the marketplace?
So specifically on Amazon, or just marketplaces in general?
Let's focus just on Amazon specifically, if you could.
Yeah, and are you talking more the price controlling? Is that the question?
No, just the consumer. So again, I'm looking for a Bluetooth speaker, and I go in and my JBL option $79.99. I've got a $29. That is, to be honest with you, doing some 3P again, $125 cross out price that never happened.
For same product?
For similar product.
Yeah.
For a similar product. So for example, the Flip.
Yeah.
For example.
Okay, yeah. So there's MAP pricing policies in the U.S., right? So if it's same generation Flip, so let's call it the Flip 6 and the Flip 6, that's an issue. We would bring that up. I think he's got a more question for that.
Yeah, I'm going to clarify. I apologize. So more about the competition, the China micro brands that
I
are
see.
offering you a
I
similar
got
product.
I got you.
My apologies.
Yeah,
So,
no. Makes sense. So it's more of the products that aren't really JBL products,
Correct.
right? Okay,
Correct.
so here's what we did, and this took a long time. Okay, the non-authorized dealers, right, and the products that aren't authorized by JBL or made by JBL, right? We have a gated deal with Amazon, which means that any unauthorized dealer or products that are not true JBL products, they need to take away their pages. Now, they did not offer this service to us going back 3 years ago, so we weren't on Amazon 3 years ago. And it wasn't until we came to a gated agreement that we do this. So if you're seeing product, let's catch up after this because I'll have it pulled.
I think it's also about like how do you compete where they're saying it's the same thing, but it's not. They're not saying they're JBL, but they're just a micro brand is a very polite way of saying an import knockoff.
It's a knockoff.
Right,
It's
yeah,
an
import
knockoff.
knockoff.
I like that. I'm going to use that micro brand terminology, but how do you compete against that?
So believe it or not, in the U.S., it's not as big of a challenge as it is in like South America or even our Asia markets. So we actually have marketing campaigns on how to identify counterfeit products that aren't authentic. And there's videos, you could tell by the material of the badge, you could tell the size of the badge, is it glued on, is it in? So we actually create content to kind of help out with some of that stuff. But it is a big challenge that does keep us up because the counterfeit market's a multi-million-dollar market. And that could be incremental revenue for us if we could get it gated properly.
And it's probably also just about like talking about JBL as a brand and the quality and like what you get with it versus those micro brands is probably going to be a way to battle that.
And then they blow up,
well.
catch on fire, and then the consumer comes after us, and it's not even
Right.
our product. So.
Right. Do we have time
Good
for
question.
one more? Or
Yeah, we had one over here.
Hey, Emily from UpTalk. My question's regarding, your cross-category product that obviously cares about education, which I love, but we're getting into influencer marketing, we're getting into live shopping, we're getting into 2-day shipping, 1-hour shipping. How are you expecting this to affect returns of products, knowing that that impulse buy is going to increase probably that influx in, well, I don't love how this set, it wasn't as noise canceling as I actually wanted. And how do you prepare for that influx of returns coming in and kind of counteracting that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have the highest returns coming out of holiday. Obviously, if a product's gifted, it might not be the right one. It's pretty manageable in regards to at least we could expect it, or we know what to expect just beyond history. To be honest with you, I haven't given it much thought. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're driving more product and driving more revenue, then yes, theoretically, returns will happen. We have a whole process of refurbished and all of that, which ultimately helps and kind of offsets some of the costs. But I don't really have a strategy in regards to, hey, if we see a double-digit growth in returns, we're at single-digit now. What do we do? I don't know. I mean, we would address it as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So time for one last question, and then we'll wrap up.
Be a good problem to have if your sales go up so much that your returns go up too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So I'm also a Flash alumni as well, so I
Nice.
appreciate the call out. So yes, love those days. So it's I'll spare the story. And also the party box, a big fan of the kids. My kids play sports, so they take it in the locker room. They don't go all crazy. So love that product. I had a question about, you were talking about a little bit of the omni-channel customer, the segmentation. And I know your focus areas is more of the consumer products, but I was curious if there was any segmentation or omni-channel connection between maybe a person that buys a vehicle that has your product in it and then they cross over to a consumer product.
It's a great question. We've been talking about it for years and we're not there yet. Specifically, if you were to buy a Mercedes and it comes with a Harman Kardon product, can we retarget that consumer to buy a pair of Harman Kardon headphones, right? We want to do it. We're just not there yet. We've done one-offs working with dealerships on that, or hey, congratulations, again, I'm throwing out Mercedes on your Mercedes in your Harman Kardon system. Here's 20% off, a Harman Kardon product online. So we've done that, but not truly seamless and not turnkey or 24/7. Yeah, good question.
And the last one. So thank you very much, Dave,
Okay.
Erik.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.